could you tell us, coming briefly, about your expertise and what you're doing?
Right, so my name is Derek Kalin. I'm from Counterpart International, supporting the Innovation for Change Network. I am part of a team of people who support civil society organizations and activists to apply new tools and processes so they can achieve their work more effectively. Part of an innovation team that looks at the different creative ways that people are trying to achieve social good objectives and help share these processes between different members of our network.
And what problems do you aim to solve, and maybe you also face as someone who's trying to make changes?
Yeah. Both the Innovation for Change Network and then Counterpart International that are supporting the Innovation for Change Network tackle a variety of issues. The theme of our work is civic space, but civic space is defined globally in a bunch of different ways. So for some people, it's the rights of the disabled or the ability of people to participate in a broader economy. Some people are focused on democracy and human rights, and some people even define it in terms of conflict and peace building. So there are a range of problems being faced, and people face challenges from effective communication to being creative in the ways that they are collaborating with each other to sustainability issues, just surviving in a low resource environment. How do civil society organizations support each other to achieve their social goods?
Okay, great. And how do you envision the help that what you're doing is supposed to bring? In what ways people
Yeah.
people can benefit?
So within the Innovation for Change Network, the idea is that there's a global network of people all sharing their achievements and their strategies and concepts. So for example, in the Latin America and Caribbean hubs, they've developed an approach called the sharing economy. Basically, the idea is that civil society doesn't require or it does require financial resources, but financial resources aren't the only thing necessary to sustain an organization. Organizations need to be able to share skills, knowledge, approaches, and the Latin America Hub has developed a platform called Comunidad, which is spreading across the network to places like the MENA Hub or the Central Asia Hub. In other approaches, you know, I talk a little bit about game design, since this is my passion as a former game developer, and I show people different ways that games have been used to achieve positive social good, whether by changing people's knowledge, attitudes, or behaviors in a variety of different ways in a variety of different contexts.
I was just thinking, our project here in Attention News that I'm employed in deals with helping people to educate themselves in terms of media literacy and prevention of being affected by fake news. Are there, I'm just trying to figure out if your area of work has anything that has something in common with, like, for example, is anything of what you do could help, for example, journalists or media entities to be more to be free of disinformation or misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that video games are very good at is helping people understand complex systems. You know, sometimes with traditional media, the information transfers one way, and you know, you watch a video or you listen to a news story or you read a book and it kind of washes over you and you hope to absorb some of that information. The cool thing about video games is that they enable you to the cool thing about video games is that they enable you to interact with a complex system. So in 2005, there was a video game called Peacemaker about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and this was a very complicated, it was and is a very complicated system. You know, you've got Israelis and Palestinians each with a different narrative of what the conflict is about. There are many different actors at play, each with their own different priorities, and the video game's objective was to help people understand how complex the peace-building process was. So you play the role of either a Palestinian leader or a Israeli leader, and you have to make decisions about how to achieve a peace-building outcome. And depending on your decisions, and you have a range of options from like making policy decisions or deciding to use diplomacy or force, you will please certain actors and make other actors angry. And if you come into this system with like a predefined idea of what the solution is, and you say, oh, one side is all evil, one side's all good, and I'm just going to kick everybody out and do it the way I want to do, you will lose the game. And it's only by understanding the complex relationships that are going on that you can progress and do better. Video games allow people to interact with complex systems, and if somebody is exploring how media plays out in a variety of different ways, or understanding how fake news works, video games might be an interactive way to explore that phenomenon and get to a better understanding of it.
So interesting, yeah. And video games are believed to be something that is inherently useless, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, time wasters. Can you bring up any example, any other examples like this one of positive changes that video games can bring to society or to individuals?
I'm glad you asked. Absolutely. Yeah. Video games have been applied for a ton of social good purposes. You know, one framework that I often see used is talking about knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors. And some video games have been designed or used to impact all of these things. One of my favorite examples is how video games have been used to crowdsource knowledge and understanding. So different scientific communities have created games where players interact with the game to solve real-world problems. For example, the University of Washington created a game in 2008 called Fold-It, which tackled the very complex folding of proteins within the human cells. And these proteins have impact on the human body, on our development, on the way that we respond to diseases or to medicines. And so there's a lot of interest in understanding this complex process of how proteins fold. The designers of Fold-It created a game that rewarded players for shaping proteins in a certain way. And as a result of this, they had a gaming community able to tackle real-world scientific problems and solve challenges related to medicine. So the big example that they brought up there in their own work is in 2013, I think, members of University of Washington had Fold-It players tackle a problem around the folding of enzymes, related to HIV/AIDS. And within the space of 13 days, they were able to solve a particular problem, which had been puzzling people with PhDs for decades in order to figure out. Another example more recently is in the realm of EVE Online. Have you heard of EVE Online? No. EVE Online is a massively multiplayer online game. It's a game where, you know, at one point 500,000 people were playing, and it's a very, you know, entertainment game. It's space, and you have spaceships, and it's about science fiction. One nonprofit worked with a group of scientists who had a database of, I think, 12 million images of the inside of human cells. And they were able to develop a game inside this entertainment game, which had players labeling the insides of these cells in order to help scientists better understand what was going on inside those images. And over the course of several months, they performed something close to 33 million image classifications. So it's an example of how, you know, gamers used, it is an example of how gamers used gameplay to solve a real-world human need. And that's just in the sciences. If you wanted to look at games for empathy building, there are a lot of people who are using VR to try to put the player in the shoes of another group and get them to feel, understand the perspective of that other group. So the University of Stanford has done a number of VR games where, for example, the player experiences what it is like to become homeless. They put on the VR helmet and have to make a series of decisions as a person who is, you know, financially insecure has to make these decisions. So you look around your house and you have to choose which items of your furniture or which of your possessions you need to sell in order to make your rent. Once you lose your home, you figure out how to live best inside your car. And they've done longitudinal studies. They've done studies over time that prove that people have a greater sense of empathy for the homeless population as a result of playing this game. And there are other examples of people using VR to build empathy, whether it be to capture the experiences of migrants or people experiencing severe conflict, like in the Syrian war. And then finally, games can also be used for expanding people's knowledge, whether it be, you know, the edutainment style games that just reward people for remembering trivia, or having people interact with a story from history or the present day, where, you know, the gamer is hooked by the narrative, but they also, as a result of playing, come to learn something about the topic of the game. So perhaps that's another example of how games might be employed for improving media literacy. If there's a story about it, if there's a narrative, perhaps about a person who attains media literacy and benefits from it, then gamers can go through that experience similarly, learn as the character within that game is learning, and become more informed as a result.